true patriots and loyal men, an honour to the state of Vermont and all deserving of the honour of their fellow citizens. I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan Adams, could you say that just one more time? Right, maybe they didn't hear you all the way in the back. Or maybe it's just they can't hear you over all of the cheering. Said if you wouldn't mind saying it one more time, just for the record. Good words. Great introduction. You know what I should have said? You know what I should have said? Rosanna, my love, could you get him to fill the park back up? I just thought of what I should have said. You know, perhaps if they gave a man a moment to think before they put him up in front of a crowd, maybe he'd have a chance to think of what he wanted to say. I would have said, I accept these accolades in an Irish accent on behalf of an Irish company all deserving of the distinguished honour of their fellow citizens. Actually, you know, I don't get him to fill it up just yet. Who knows what other pearls of wisdom I might find deeper in this jar. See, I'll bet you they gave President Lincoln some time to gather his thoughts before they put him up against the podium. I bet they let him think of what he's going to say. I would have liked an opportunity to have invited the Honourable former Governor Fairbanks. Would have liked to have been able to give him a personal invitation. Would have liked to imagine him sitting right down in the first row, and I would have said to him, despite the best efforts of our Honourable former Governor Fairbanks, I was able to distinguish myself and my company on the field of battle, and perhaps it was fighting against small-minded bureaucrats such as himself that prepared me to hold my ground the way I did on Cemetery Ridge. You know what, Governor? I'm going to invite you now. Come here. You have a seat. I'll pour you a glass even. Come on. Sit yourself down. There. That one's for you, you old teetotaler. You know what, Governor? You might not like the idea of a man like me. Lowly immigrant. Irish at that. You might not like my church. But I'll tell you this much for nothing. It was not going to be a company of well-to-do members of the Temperance Union that was going to have divided Pickett's charge like the Red Sea. No. Imagine what we could have done if you'd let my first company go to war. But no. No, the lads, they go out. They cause just a little bit of trouble and that's it. They're disbanded. This whole thing could be over by now. I tell you, Governor, the enemy did not get a shiver down their spine when they saw those Fenian flags, because they knew that those were the companies best known for their fierce punctuality. They didn't shake in their boots when they heard that war cry, "Fire!" because they knew that that meant the finest God-fearing men their country had to offer were on their way. No, Governor. They knew what it meant. They knew it enough to fear it. You're afraid of even the thought of it, aren't you? Oh, we're good enough to be in the charge. Not quite good enough to lead the charge. We're good enough to fight for our country. We're good enough to die for it. But, as far as glory is concerned, well, that is much better set on the other side of an Irish need not apply sign. it doesn't anymore. And everybody knows it. And it doesn't matter what side of this war you're on, doesn't matter what religion you're in. You know, when you hear that cry, Fala Bala! You clear the damn way! You know what? I'm sorry, no. No, everything's fine. I'm fine. I'm just trying to get my coat off. I've eaten so much in the next 3 days, I think it's swelled. No, I'm fine. Just give me a moment. Moment. It takes on a whole different meaning, doesn't it? So take a moment, wait for the cannons to stop. It's not. Take a moment, maybe pick some of those wheels out of your hardtack, depending on how hungry you are. You know, Governor, I had to get myself court-martialed. Get just a moment to sit and think. Of course, that time was the last thing I wanted to be doing. No, I know, that doesn't shock you at all. No, I got myself court-martialed. What's more, the reason was refusal to obey orders. That's right. I refused to lead my men into a position where I knew that their certain death, by way of boredom, mixed by stifled rage, packed tightly and topped with a musket ball of hypocrisy. After already having to sit through the Reverend Joseph Sargent's Christmas service, I could not ask them to go back just the 3 days later for his Sunday worship. There's only so much good Christian can endure. 3 times they came and they asked me to present my men. 3 times I refused them, and for that they took my sword. Because I won't make my men sit and listen to the word of God in a church conceived by Englishmen. Oh, you will be happy to know that I wrote to the current governor of Vermont. I asked him to please, and as a priest, please, to end the suffering of the Irish and few of the French. You'll be happy to know it went unanswered. Your proud tradition of no and nothing politics is still in full force. You want to know why this war is going on so long? Things like that. General Stewart, he's raiding not too far away. Here I am. I don't have my sword or my command to go and do anything about it. That sword was not this sword. No, you're not even fit to touch it. The sword was bought for me. The sword was presented to me by my men. It was placed in my own hands by my first lieutenant, John Sinnott. And he said, "Never stronger arm, no stouter heart could wield the trusted steel. Long may you live to wear it." Yes, he said, with pleasure and pride for the high opinion the men have for your gallantry and your service, for your dedication to integrity and fierce devotion to what is right, and yes, for doing all in your power to make us good soldiers. God, he said it so much better though. He made good speeches. Come here. You aren't even fit to sit and drink with a man. There you are. You want to hear about this man? You want to hear about this man that you're drinking with? He was my second in command. But those last 2 days at Gettysburg would have been his last 2. He'd already been promoted, only he didn't know it yet. Selfishly, I thank God for it. I can't imagine you not being at my side. No, I mean that, John. Do. When we arrived, Gettysburg, the rebels, they'd already overrun this forward artillery division. So General Hancock himself, he yells out, "Colonel Randall, can you not see that battery?" And Colonel Randall, he yells back, "I can, and damn quick too if you let me." So we all charge forward, we're crying, "Farabala!" We're running forward, clear the way, and they do. They lay right down in front of us, rather than stand against us. We get to the battery about the same time Colonel Randall does. We actually start dragging it back by hand to where they can get horses attached to it, and then the horses, they drag it back up across the line. This line up here, that's behind us. And they're all watching us. I mean, we're sort of the show, aren't we, John? And they're cheering us on. And then all of a sudden, we're under fire. We can't quite tell from where, but there's a small schoolhouse, a farmhouse over here. So we charge the farmhouse and we surround it. There's maybe, 40 of us, right? So I'm there and I'm screaming as if there was, "Fall out!" No, you're right, no. First, I surrender! Fall out! Every damn one of you! And you know what, Governor? They do. There's like 80 men. 80 men and 3 officers come spilling out. We take them under guard, we bring them back up across the line. I know, I'm getting to that part. I know. It's the best part. So we're coming back up over the hill, and everybody's screaming at us, and they're crying, and they're cheering, and they're waving their hats. It's a lot like coming down into Burlington today. I tell you, I could get used. I know, all right, I'm getting to it. So, I'd be the first to admit, Governor, to this point we hadn't seen too much serious action. We'd spent most of our time doing picket duty, we'd had some skirmishes, but as we're coming up, there's this old guy, and he'd obviously seen some real hard service. And he looks at us and he says, "What troops be you, fellas?" And we all cry out, "Why, we're the Green Mountain Boys!" And he looks us up and down and he says, "Figured you must be green or you'd have never run in there." So we drink to you, my second in command, my first lieutenant, and my favourite school teacher, John said. "You're not fit to drink with the man, but I certainly permit you drink to him." I drink to you as well. Even though you did spend the better part of the next day lying down on the job. I kid him. I kid him, Governor, because I have earned the right. Oh no, you bet I have. You bet I have. I single-handedly divided the charge of Pickett's entire brigade so you could catch up on your beauty sleep. Well, you didn't even see it. No, don't interrupt me, Governor. I'm talking to the lieutenant here. Oh, no, you will not lecture me about manners. I am not yelling. No, I'm fine. I am. It's okay. Okay, fine. We're going to let the Governor settle this one, all right? I'm going to make my case first. All right, Governor. You know what we got for our bravery and our gallantry in securing those cannons? We got to spend the night out on the bare ground, no rations, just the smell of death wafting over us. And we got to wake up to the sound of cannon fire. Cannon fire like you wouldn't believe, and it just keeps going. You see where we are? There's this ridge that spreads out, and we're right about the center of that cemetery ridge. There's a battery of cannon right to our side, and they're firing out about a mile of open ground to where the rebels, they have their cannon all set up on Seminary Ridge. And you see, Governor, for the beginning parts of the day, this was a gunner's fight. Our cannons, they're firing out, trying to find their cannons, and their cannons are firing back, trying to find ours, and in the process, they're trying to kill as many people as they possibly can. Along the ridge, there's this low stone wall. There's a few thousand men doing their best to crawl right up inside it. The only people up on their feet are officers and the artillery. And that's so that they can see. But with this smoke, can't see anything. You know, we're going to have another toast. We're going to have another toast. We're going to toast to Captain James Rorty. He's a good Fenian. He's a good Irishman. It was his battery that was right next to us. He was originally had 65 men. From 65 men, he is now down to 3. 3 men and 2 cannon. And he's standing there and he rips off his captain's jacket and he rips off his shirt and he starts loading his cannons in the first gun into position, and he's calling out to volunteers, please, pass me ammunition. And he looks to his Fenian brothers who he'd seen prove their bravery just the day before. And you know what, Governor? They go. They leave the relative safety of that stone wall and they stand up. And they stand with this man who is stripped to the waist and he's covered with blood and mud and sweat and soot, and they're passing him shell after shell and he's firing away. After a while we get our orders that we are to move forward down the ridge. Other volunteers, they come and they take our places. And as we're tumbling down to this little line of fence posts, he's still up there, he's still firing away. So we drink to this man, to Captain James Rorty. Is that not enough courage for you, Governor? Is that not enough for you to lift a glass to an Irishman? I'm getting to it. Right. Just so you can see it, Governor. Let's say that this side of the table over here is Cemetery Ridge. This is where we are. Over this side of the table, this is Seminary Ridge. This is where the Confederates are. About in between is about a mile of open ground, except for there's a little road runs down the middle. There's a little line of fence. It's just about here and right here, Governor, where your insultingly full glass is. That's where we are. It's kind of fitting as there's a little stream there. There's a little bit of bushes. Now you remember I was saying that their artillery all seemed to be on our position. So the colonel, he asks that we might move down so we could see better. We get permission, and we do. We go down to that line of fence posts. And it's safer as far as cannon are concerned, and the visibility it's better. But that goes both ways, because now we've got sharpshooters to look out for. So the order is given to keep your head down. Right. And meanwhile the cannons are firing over us the whole time. Every conceivable thing that could be shoved down the barrel of a cannon and fired out over us, they did. And after a while, cannon stops. Nobody knows why. Maybe they ran out of artillery. Maybe they're preparing for a charge. No one quite knows. But we are told to keep our heads down, despite the fact that it's getting hotter and hotter, and the dead are starting to swell. Their faces are starting to distort. Men start risking getting up just to cover their faces, just to keep them from looking at us. What? I know it has nothing to do with the point at hand, but he should hear it. Anyway, as the cannons have stopped, the men start peeking out. They start lifting their heads up, looking out, and pretty soon it seems like every damn head is up over the fence line. So John here, Everett the damn school teacher, stands up and he says, "Men, keep your heads down!" And right at that point, one last shell goes off. Big piece of shrapnel comes down, rips right through his heart, knocks him right to the ground. He's sitting there, his head's bleeding. His eyes are just wide, can't make a single goddamn word. He's just squeezing my hand. Now you tell me, Governor, do I have a right to be angry at this man? I know it was your job. I know it was your job to give orders, but your order was to keep your head down. And that was given to you by your captain. And I know, Governor, that's a goddamn good point. Why didn't I? Why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I give the command? You're right. Who knows where that shell would have gone? Had you not stood up and put your own head in the way? You could have become captain earlier. Could have been you coming down the hill into Burlington to all the cheers. Could have been you giving a speech. That's not fair. I gave a damn good speech. So you want me to fill you in on what you missed? Keep quiet, Governor. I don't care about your opinion. Never mattered to me before. Don't think it's approved at all. I don't care if it is rude. I don't care if he wants to hear it. Who else is going to understand? When the cannon stopped, and they formed up on that line, it was a sight like you wouldn't believe. It was a mile of men. Couldn't see how deep, not that that would matter. There were just more and more and more of them. If you'll remember, Governor, we are down here. The rest of the line is up here. The only people who have it worse than us is the 16th Vermont. They're out here by the road. They've been sent out to skirmish. They've been pinned down there all day. So we can look at them and we can say, God, would not want to be those boys. Of course, the rest of the line up here is looking down at us and saying the exact same thing. But to put it in a term that maybe you can understand. Do you like lawn bowling? Yes. So imagine you're out for a nice game of lawn bowling and you happen to be yourself the head pin. And the ball happens to be about 1 mile wide. I looked at it and I'll be honest, John, I said to myself, we're both going to be leaving this earth within an hour or so. Just kept coming. I bet you though, those rebels, they were just praying that the reason that those cannons had stopped was because we ran out of ammunition and not because we were trying to lure them into a charge. And I can't blame them. Up until that point, if you had had to place a bet between whether or not our generals were luring you into a trap or just making a tactical blunder, you'd have made money on tactical blunder every time. I admitted I was surprised myself when the cannons started again. I told the men to keep their heads down, but I watched the best I could. Every time a cannon fired, it would inflict just terrible suffering out there in the fields. I mean, they just kept marching forward. Everything we could shoot at them, from long-range shot. That'll take an arm off, or a leg, Governor, or punch a hole right through the middle of you. Or the ones that go overhead and explode and rain shrapnel down. Every muzzle blast meant a new horror out there in the fields. And they just kept stepping over them, and they just kept coming. Probably hoping that they would make it at least far enough to fire a musket. Stop! Steady, boys! The call came out. Make ready! Remember, take good aim and fire low. The orders were coming down from the colonel. They were getting repeated from captain to captain to captain. Keep cool! But now you could hear them. And boy, you could feel the earth just trembling as they started coming across the road. Where the 16th of Vermont had been, they've been able now to fall back. They're right beside us. They are now out of the fire, back into the frying pan, so to speak. But at that point, finally, we hear the word, comes down, goes from captain to captain to captain, till my own voice echoes it, and we stand up, we get our first good look at what's coming at us, and we fire! Terrible, terrible volley right into their front line, and it just crumples, and they step right over him. At this point, as they're coming across the road, cannons, they switch to canister shot. That's 20 lead balls that are all packed in this canister that's designed to break apart as it's fired. It basically turns a cannon into this immense shotgun. It's devastating. Take out large sections of the front line, carnage of it at close range. It's indescribable. It's as indescribable as it was to explain just how happy I was to see it. You see, Governor, we've started to notice that for every man that falls, they're filling the gaps in their line by dressing them to the left. So when a man falls, they dress to the left. Dress to the left. And then the next man who falls, dress to the left again. So with every volley that we fire, for every man that falls, we're pushing them just a little bit more to the side of us. And pretty soon, we're firing volley after volley, and it seems as if they're starting to turn. And there they are. They are. It's a series of left obliques, as if they're starting to turn the entire charge to get out of the way of our fire. The division that should be to their side has fallen back. They're not even yet across the road. So we watch as they go right to the side of us. And we've got this little stand of bushes here that's sort of shielding us. And now we are standing directly to the side of this charge of their entire division. We are on their flank. That means side, Governor. So we take advantage of this opportunity. We call for the line to form up. We pivot the line like a big hinge on my position all the way to the right. We swing like a giant hinge that's seated into the ground with my boots, and we come up alongside them and we start firing volley after volley like fishermen standing on the banks of a river. And they start to double quick, and they're racing up the hill in a charge, and they're so tightly packed together that there's no way for them to level a musket forward, much less to their side. Some, they see us, they start to try and form up lines to refuse us, but with all the confusion, with all the orders being screamed and hollered and cursed, with all the officers lying in the heaps of the dead, there was no way. We just kept firing with every volley. We're pushing them just a little bit more, right into the line of cannons, and into the lines of muskets, and into the lines of waiting bayonets. And pretty soon, this ocean of men, it's cut down to a river, and then to a stream, and just a bloody tide trying to limp its way back across the field. And rebel cannons start up again, less ferociously than before. We think they're maybe probably just trying to cover their retreat. Doesn't matter. After we've secured the prisoners, the orders are that we are to go back to our positions. I returned to you. I don't know if you know that, but I did. You weren't conscious, but you were breathing. I was so happy to hear you breathing. And we sat there, and we held you. We couldn't take you from the field. There were sharpshooters keeping an eye out any time anybody tried to go out and help the wounded or take a man off. So we had to stay. So we sat there, we listened to them crying out in agony and desperation. Men from both sides dying together in one last insult to humanity and decency. At least you weren't out there. You were with us. You were with your brothers. We were able to bandage your head. We were able to hold your hand. We were able to talk to you, to pray for you. And you didn't have to hear it. And you didn't have to see it. So you tell me, school teacher, how do I explain all of that in a speech? How do I look out over this crowd of people who are clapping and cheering and tell them what it's like to look out over this writhing field of blood and death? The aftermath of the greatest slaughter anybody has ever seen. Or what do you tell me, Mr. Politician? How do I smile and I wave at them and I say nothing about it? What would you have said, John? What would you have said? You'd have said something about decency. You'd have said something about honor and courage. Well, I said all of that! But how do I stir them? How do I turn them? How do I turn them the way that we turned that charge? How do I direct them to where the real fight ought to be? And I know goddamn well you can't answer me. I know you're not there, okay? I am not mad. I'm not one of these poor souls who's fallen out of the march and they're sitting on the side of the road with their head in their hands, rocking back and forth. I'm not. I'm just not ready to be without you yet. I'm not ready to be without your counsel. I'm not ready to be without you by my side. You remember the words from Mar. He said that one Fenian, tested and tried in battle, was worth 10 men. Well, I don't feel like 10 men tonight. I saw their faces, John. The men who were marching out after Lee. We were marching out, our service was done. They were off to another fight, and another fight, and another fight after that, and who knows, maybe this will turn the tides. Maybe the war will be over, and then how do I look at them and I tell them that there's still more fighting to be done? Maybe you can explain that to me, Mr. Politician. Maybe that's what my speech should have been in the park today. I should have looked at them and I should have said that when your men return from war, that there's still work to be done. Not just for the preservation of a union, but for the liberation of an entire island. How do you do it? How do you look at people who've already given so much and ask them to give more? But I saw it, John. I saw it out there. I saw the weakness that's inherent in great strength. When I saw that line, I thought that that's it. This is the end. It looked unstoppable. And in the face of that, it would be right for men to lose courage. It'd be right for them to crumble. I'm sure that's what General Lee was imagining. He looked at our lines and he said, they've been beaten time after time after time. They're hungry. They're tired. All I have to do is show significant force and they will crumble in front of me, and then I'll push them back, and I'll push them back, and I'll push them all the way out to sea. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. But he miscalculated. He miscalculated. It doesn't matter the numbers. It matters the men. Their willingness to stand their ground. Their willingness to fight for what they believe in. You may think, Governor, that after all of this, I'd have lost my thirst for battle. As much as I don't ever want to see another man fall, I cannot stand idly by while tyrants terrorize people just because they perceive them as weak. To be strong, the sword must be tempered. And I can think of no hotter furnace than the one we marched out of just a few short weeks ago. I will be that sacred weapon, and I will strike true at the heart of my enemy. I will not forget why we got ourselves into this, why we started a company, why we fought, why we pursued any chance for glory. And there will be plenty yet to come.